Morning all. Well, it's a pretty lovely day out here this morning, and what did I decide to do? I decided to spend some time in the garage. So I've got the Seat Leon. It's a 61 plate, and basically we are going to Scotland in a couple of weeks' time, and had an advisory on the MOT with regards to leaking shocks. So decided to do the shocks this weekend. To see if I can get that sorted before we go away. Obviously we're going to Scotland, so it's going to be up and down hills, so having decent suspension might be very useful. So let's get started. So as I said, it's a Seat Leon. It's a 1.2 TSI, 61 plate, and got to do the front shocks. It's actually the passenger side shock that's leaking, but seeing as it's easier to back it into the garage like this, I thought I'd start with the driver's side. So got the wheel off already. I'm pretty sure that these are the original shocks, so I suspect this is going to be an absolute arse to get out. I'm trying to figure out what to say there, but recently had new pads and discs, so they're fine, but you can see that the drop link is pretty busy. Pretty rusted, so that's going to be a challenge. And then the bottom bolt here, I am told, is an absolute arse to get out, so we're going to have some fun with that. Yeah, so these are the replacement bolts for the bottom mount on the shock. So it's an 18mm socket on the back end, so that end there, sorry for the focus, and it's a double hex on this end, which is a V14. So gonna have some fun getting this out, because it's been in there for, well, since 2012 I suspect, so we're gonna have some fun. But I'll try and get as much as this on film, but I will bleep the square in. I'm sure it's going to happen, so we'll see how we go. So yeah, okay, so it came loose fairly easily, which was surprising, but maybe a promising sign. And it does appear to be moving in the actual shaft, but I'm told that it can be quite awkward to get out, so it's easier to not take the nut off fully and actually just leave it on to start with, and then tap it with a mallet. But the bolt seems to be moving, so I'm fairly comfortable that this one's going to come out all right. So I'm going to take it off and see what it looks like. Yeah, so she's not in great shape, pretty corroded, a lot of dirt on there, but it has come out, which is a blessing. So we'll move on now to the drop link, which is this one here. I've got new drop links as well, because they look like they were going to be a pain to come off, so, and they've been on there a while, so I figured if while I was doing it I might as well get it out. So I'm going to have to try and get this nut off, which is, it looks like it's got an Allen key or a hex head in there to stop the rotation, and then you have to undo it. So this is going to be a spanner job and an Allen key, so this ought to be fun. Okay, so we've hit our first snag. So basically the hole in the end of the bush on the end of the anti-roll drop link is rounded out. So basically, if I just spin this round, you can see that this is just doing absolutely nothing. It's just spinning. It's locked in there, not locked in there at all. So what I've decided to do is go to aggression angle grinder. So if you think about it logically, it's not actually that bad. So if I show you what I mean. Obviously I'm gonna cut the bar here, just down here at the bottom. This top piece will come off with the shock, and I'm not going to be reusing it because the base of the shock is going to be replaced. Got a new drop link which is just there, and then I should hopefully be able to get in and try and get that off. If I have to cut it off, I have to cut it off. I'm not going to worry too much about it. It's corroded to crap anyway, so not going to use it. So let's have a go at cutting this off. Not the most stylish of safety glasses, but safety first. Best not to take a risk with the angle grinder, I think. Perfect. Okay, so she's cut. Hopefully I can use that as a bit of leverage to be able to get the bottom bolt out, because I can imagine it's probably in as bad a shape as the top one. And then this one here will come off when we take the shock off, so no too worried about that one. Let's see how we get on. So now what we'll do is move on to the top mounts, which effectively are underneath the window cowling. Could be quite interesting to get in there. It's not exactly got a huge amount of room between the bonnet and this plastic cover. We're going to give it a go. Shouldn't be too difficult, and then hopefully we can figure out how we're going to drop the shock out, and then we have the fun of trying to get the spring off. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take the windscreen wiper off to see if this lifts out a little bit more, to give me a bit more space at the top. So basically just going to have to take this off of here. That's 13 mil. So we'll whip that off. Now the interesting thing with these is one is left-handed thread and one is right-hand thread. So I'm going to find out in a second which one this is. Oh, no, this is the standard one, so the other side is the opposite hand. I know that because when I tried to take it off some time ago, I tried undoing it the normal way and broke it off. So that one over there has got a bit of a makeshift package of work going on it with a different bolt and stuff, but that's a story for another day. So let's see. Hopefully, I'm not completely convinced, I will be honest, but I'm hoping that this cowling actually lifts up. But it might be stuck under the windscreen. Possible. Not completely sure. Not sure. Doesn't seem that promising. Just see if we can get a screwdriver under there. Don't want to go too mad with it because obviously I'm a bit worried about breaking the windscreen. But I would say it's probably does come up. Let me spend a bit of time on this and see if I can get it out, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. Okay, so the cowling does come out, one below the windscreen. It actually sits in a groove underneath the thing, and it's slotted in. So it took a little bit of, well, it took a bit of daring to just pull it as hard as I could to see what happens. So now we've got that out of the way, we can get proper access to these top mount bolts, because I am replacing the top mount as well, because frankly there's no point in not doing it because it's been in there as long as the shocks. So okay, let's see if we can get these bolts out. Okay, word of advice. Put something onto the screen to protect it, because I've just had a very near miss with the socket and could have quite easily smashed the windscreen. So what I've done is put a anti-slip mat on it. I'll show you now. Anti-slip mat, and I've put it on there. So basically when this is down here and I'm swinging it to under the screen, under the bolts, it's protecting the screen. Safety first, people. So I've had to do a little bit of touch-up spray on there because I cut into the paint. As you can see, it's slightly different grey, but managed to get it out. What an absolute nightmare. But it is out now, and got it out there. I've cleaned all that up with a bit of a Scotch-Brite, and I've took the liberty, excuse the tools, and I've built up the new shock, and I've put the top of the drop link in. So I'm about to start putting it back together. But to get that bolt out took hours. I think I've probably spent 3-4 hours trying to get that bolt off. It's in a very awkward place. Right, morning all. So day 2. Didn't film as much of yesterday as I wanted to, just due to the fact that it got very frustrating. So we're on to the near side, passenger side. I've got the wheel off and I'm just starting, so I'll show you where we're kicking off from. Let's switch this round. Okay, so got the wheel off. I've had the penetrant oil on for about half an hour just to give it a chance to soak in a little bit. And so we're starting on the bottom bolt for the shock. Going to get that out first, try to anyway. So it's an 18mm socket on this side, and it's a torque, a double or a triple hex torque on the other side. I'll get the size off of that in a minute. I think it's on the other video. The problems that we had yesterday, I'm expecting to have just as bad on this side, so not going to be able to get the bottom drop link or the top drop link undone, so we're going to end up having to cut it. Chances are we're going to have to cut the spring, but the major problem yesterday was the top mounts. So on the far side, this bolt did not want to come out. In fact, if I show you the mount, so this is the mount, and it's got captive fixings encased in the rubber, but obviously with the nuts being in there for close to 15 years, well, was it 12? Yeah, 13 years. Basically, they'd rusted in, and as soon as I tried to undo them, it turned the fixing, and eventually was just spinning. So had a absolute nightmare getting it out. Ended up reverting to something quite drastic, which was this, with a very long axle blade in it, basically bent over in like that, cutting the bolt. Didn't eventually, once it got going, it didn't actually take that long to get out, but to get to the point of deciding and figuring out how to use that, well, that took a while. So as you can see, we had to cut the spring, and we got a new mount anyway, so that's not a problem. So yeah, it wasn't fun. So what we're trying to attempt today is to try to avoid some of those problems. Not expecting it not to be as difficult, but I'm a little bit more refreshed. It's earlier in the morning than I got started yesterday, and I was on it until nearly 9 o'clock last night, so it took a while. I wouldn't have expected it to take that long, certainly not for a professional, which I am not, but I learned a lot about this suspension and the fact that the spring itself, or the shock, sorry, the shock itself was okay. It still had some return in it, but not a huge amount, certainly not as much as the new shock, and obviously with the new spring, will obviously feel a lot better. The only problem is because I had to cut one of the bolts, I can't put the top mount, I can't finish fixing the top mount. So thought, well, it's Bank Holiday Monday, I'll give this a try today, and see if I need any more parts that I can get from Seat, hopefully tomorrow, and get them replaced. But you know, I'm going to have a go at this today. I'm going to take you along a bit better this time, so that you can see what's going on, and you can see the hassle that you can have with these sorts of things. If you know, and fair play to Seat, these shocks have been on there since the day dot, and they've lasted, you know, it's done 114,000 miles now, this car, and is in, you know, it's been frankly brilliant. You know, I wasn't sure I'd rated it. It was the wife's car to start with, and then COVID came along and we decided to go to one car, and then I started using it, and I like it. I really like it. It's a nice little car. So As I said, we're getting ready to go to Scotland in a couple of weeks' time, so just want to get this done. So let's crack on. Okay, so what I'm going to do here to knock this out, because it's pretty tight, I've tried tapping it with the hammer, it doesn't want to move. So I'm going to put the nut back on, and I'm going to give it a smack. Excuse the noise. Oh, I don't know, it looks like it's going to move. Oh, bonus. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Yay. Okay. That's better news than I was expecting. Yes, there we go. Right. Yeah, oh blimey. Okay, so you can see how pretty corroded it is there. And you can see it's not that you can see it very well, but it's a double hex, no, a triple hex in fact. Which is a, what is it? Oh, it's a V14. So yeah, it's quite a good torque. You can apply quite a lot of torque to them, so but I had to buy them special because they're a odd sort. Okay, so now we got that out of the way, we'll move on to the next problem, and I'll explain a few things that went wrong yesterday, just so it's clear to everybody how or what the sequence needs to be and what the problems it might incur that come through it. So the issues that we had yesterday is that it was extremely difficult getting the strut tower out of the casting. So, and in this one, there's actually a couple more wires in the way than there is on the other side. There was only one in this, and now there's two. So, and you end up having to tap the casting here to be able to knock this down. Obviously, this is pretty badly corroded inside, and obviously you've got the spread bar at the back, which you ideally need to try and open, but it's obviously not very easy. So, and then to get this out, you need to be able to get this section down. And the problem is obviously it's held up by the drop link. And the drop link, even if you cut it and this drops down, the drive shaft drops onto the anti-roll bar. Now, that created lots of problems yesterday, because to get this back in, you have to get this down as far as you can while you've got the spring up. And it was really difficult because the anti-roll bar was in the way. So what I may do today is actually loosen the anti-roll bar and just drop it down so I can get enough drop on the casting to be able to get the shock in when it's reassembled, because obviously I had the shock assembled with the spring, the top mount and everything all ready to go, because I've got all new parts before I wanted to put it back in. So I'm gonna have to try it in sequence, but the first thing I'm going to try and do and see if we can get the drop link out. It's probably easier, like I say, to just cut it, and I basically just cut it here in the middle before, and then I cut it off the bottom, off the actual anti-roll bar, and just pop the bolt out. So that's probably the easy way to do it, but I will give it a go to see if it will come loose, and if it does, great. If it doesn't, then it's back to the angle grinder. But you know, as I say, we're not going to reuse it. We've got a brand new drop link, so we're going to go on to that. So we'll get that done. But and then we've got the issue of the 3 bolts on the top, and we're not exactly sure what's going to happen with them. So so the sequence will be for me is I'll try and undo. No, I'll leave the top mounts in, sorry, because that'll help me to hold the shock up while I'm tapping it out of the casting. And then we'll cut the link, or get the drop link off. We'll see if we can get the bottom of the strut out, and then we'll do the top, and we'll go from there and see what breaks. Okay, so let's have a go. Right, so as suspected, drop link bolts do not want to come undone. So it's reverting to the angle grinder. So safety glasses on, I'll cut it. Let's spin this round. So I'll cut it down here, get this out of the way. I'll probably just cut the bottom one off while I'm messing around with it to get it out of the way, because it is going to be a pain. And then we'll tap the casting out and see what drops out. One drop link broken. Okay, as you can see, blimey, that is not in very good shape. So there's an MOT failure in the first place anyway, so it's actually at quite apt timing that we're doing this, but that is buggered. The top one's probably not much better, but it actually feels quite tight, but the bottom one is shot to shit. Oh, excuse my French. So yeah, time to replace. Now, a piece of advice here, which will help you when you're reseating the shock, is clean up the bottom of the shock tower where it meets the casting and scribe a line on it, because what it will do is allows you to measure from the bottom of the shock to the line, and you can measure it on the new one and put a line in, and it will tell you when you're in and when you're seated. You can see the seat from underneath, and I'll show you that in a second. But it's just a good visual thing, because you'll see when you've marked it, you'll see when the casting is dropping down, and also gives you a dimension. So let's just clean that out now, and I'll show you what I mean. So basically what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to clean up the bottom of the shock tower, which is pretty badly corroded, but it's there. Okay, so I'm going to clean that up, and then we'll get a scribe or a screwdriver and just mark a line on it. Let's just get them in there. Yeah, so you can see the line that I've scribed. Hopefully you can see it. Anyway, it is there. That'll just give me a visual reference for that. Yeah, there it is. Right, now the unfortunately the heavy bit where you end up getting a mallet and you start tapping the casting, which I know is probably a little bit on the risky side, but in the end of the day, that's corroded in there like a bugger. So let's make a start, and I'll have to use two hands for this, so I'm going to tap it out, but I'll stop at intervals so you can see the mark and you'll see what I mean. Okay, so it's not moved initially, which doesn't surprise me because it's pretty badly corroded, but so what I've done is I've got a like a crowbar, and let me show you. What is I've got a crowbar that is actually sort of underneath, and it's wedged in between the casting head, okay, where the bolt would go. So just here, it's wedged in there, it's tapped in to try and loosen off the casting, and as you can see, I've only hit that about 4 times and it's dropped down a good 8-9 mil. So just going to continue with that process until the shock drops out, and we'll go from there. So we're getting there. It's taking a bit of muscle power, my arm's gone dead, but it is coming out. So I managed to get a chisel sort of wedged in the back. It's not perfect, but it's helping to just open it. The crowbar worked very well, that got it really going, but it's moving fairly decently now, so takes a lot of banging, but we'll get there in the end. Soon drop out. Right, so that's the shock out. Doesn't look like it's loose, but it is. That's the bottom of it. So it's now obviously under the compression of the spring, which is probably tight, so need to start on the top mounts now, and then if needs be we'll cut the spring don't recommend cutting the spring to anybody. It is a very dangerous thing to do in essence. It is a lot of force, so I wouldn't recommend it. I'm being as careful as I can if I need to do it, but we'll see what happens when the top mount, if the top mounts come out, which is the next headache. If they do, great, it should just be able to pull it out. If not, we'll cut the spring and we'll lift it and we'll go from there. So let's see what happens next. Okay, so the top mounts. So we're not loosening this one. Obviously we'll do that once the shock's out. We're going to have to do these ones, and these are the ones that were problematic, to say the least. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to tighten them first. Now I'm going to try and show you this, but I'll have to put the camera down to do it. Okay, so let's see what happens. Just going to unplug this plug, which I'm not sure what it is. It's in the way. Yes, please, Bob. I've got water. Excuse me, that was just my wife. She's a very thoughtful wife. She's sitting in the house working on a bank holiday, and I'm out here banging the crap out of a casting, which I'm sure she doesn't find very amusing, but she's been very good about it. So all three of those are loose, but the question is it loose or is it turning? Now I've got to be bloody careful here that I don't smash the windscreen. So let's put a little cover over this to be sure, and let's see what happens. Alright, so that's the first one. It's come out complete. Needs a clean. Look at that. So now we'll finish off this one, which I've started, but it is tight, so I'm a little bit concerned. But to be honest, oh no, hang on, it's gone loose. There we go. Okay, yeah, as you can see, it's a bit rusty. But this one at the back is tight from day dot, so I'm a little bit concerned, and this is the one that was absolute pain in the arse yesterday as well. So I'm going to put the camera down for this one because I need to feel from underneath, but this could be the problem child again. Okay, so okay, so I'm feeling quite thankful for that. So I'll give them a good clean up with a wire brush, and I'll obviously lubricate them before they go back in. But that's three of them out, so that's a lot better than last time. And yeah, so that should technically allow me to pull the shock and the mount out. So let's put those in the pot, and let's see what happens with the mount. So let's get that off the windscreen. Don't need that to be broken, that would not be fun. Now, what I'm going to do here is, I've got two choices. Cut the spring to take the load off of it, which, you know, is always dodgy. Or what I can do is use the jack, put a bar under this to lift it, and then hook it to the left. So put a bar under here, push up on it, lift it off and drop it through, and then this should come to the left. So let's try that first. So put the bar. Really need to turn that again. Didn't exactly go to plan. Places to push down on it. Okay, so that didn't work. So I'm going to put a couple of wheel nuts back in the disc, and I'm going to hold a bar down and see if I can get a little bit more movement. But you can see what the problem is. It's resting on the anti-roll bar. So yes, you can bounce this, but not a lot. So I could take the anti-roll bar out and see if I can, not out, but loosen it and see if I can turn the bar to drop down. But not ideal, so let's have another go. Okay, so that's out. I did actually manage to do it with the bar and the trolley jack, so that did work in the end. But yeah, that spring's definitely under compression. And we do need to get it off because I need the boot that's underneath this and this rubber dust cover. So I may end up cutting the disc now anyway, just to make it easier to get off. But depends how easy I can get this top bolt out, which I will give it a go because I've got the bits out. So we'll see how that goes now. Right, so now we're going to get the top mount off. So what we've got is a Allen key that goes into the top of the strut mount, and then I've got a socket that basically, this is to hold the strut still, the actual vertical upright still, and we're going to undo the bolt. So let's have a go at that. Shot loaded. Just like that. There we go. Oh dear. Okay. That was probably not sensible, but it did come off in the end, so it's all good. Okay, so now that we've got all of the parts out, just got the bottom of the drop link to take out now. So I'm just going to angle grind that off because I don't think it's worth trying to mess about with it. And then what we'll do is we'll do some clearing up, clear the bores and everything, and make sure everything's tidy before we start reassembling the shock and putting it back in. Right, so that's that off. What I will do is I will just clean that up with a wire brush. Just give it a little touch up with some black high temperature paint just to make it look tidy, and obviously I don't want it rusting underneath there, so we'll give that 10 minutes to dry, go and have a cup of tea and we'll come back to it. Right, so while that's drying, we're going to clean this bore because I want it to be as easy to get back in as possible. I don't know how well you can make it out, but there's a lip just here. There's a lip just here that the shock actually sits on when it drops down. That's why it's useful to have that little mark at the top when we do it, so that you can measure it on the old one and see how far it drops in. Then you can make a mark on the top of the other one and you'll see how close you are to the stop, because it's very difficult to tell that you've hit the stop because obviously this is very tight. So we're going to have a go, but what I'm going to do before we do it is I'm going to drive the wedge down there just to open it out, to try and make it as easy as possible to get this shock back in. But let me clean it up first with the drill. I'm going to use this, just got like a wire brush on the end, a little Scotch-Brite brush. I'm just going to run it up and down and see how we go. I think. Yep. Typical. All right, get a new battery on. Okay, so let's try that again, this time with actually a battery that's not completely dying. Okay, hopefully, I don't know where you'll be able to see it, but let's back out a little bit. That's nicely cleaned up. Spray a bit of brake cleaner down there, just to clean it out, and we'll go from there. Now, let's reassemble the shock. Okay, so let's look at the constituent parts for the shock. So we've got the actual shock absorber itself, currently retained with that bracket that holds it in. We've got the top mount, we've got the bump stop, we've got the dust cover, we've got the new spring, the new drop link, and the bottom bolt for the shock, which holds the bottom into the casting. Now, obviously, based on my experience from yesterday, I would definitely look at buying the 3 bolts that go in the top mount as well. So the ones that go in these holes. But for this side, they come out okay. So I'm going to clean them up with a wire brush, and we'll lube them before they go back in. But this needs to be assembled before it goes back into the body. So let's do that now. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to activate the shock. Now, if I clip this off, if I can, not so easy with one hand. Hang on a second, let me put the phone down. Okay, and you'll see that the shock body rises. Oh. You see that the shock body rises. Now, one of the things I was always taught is that when you've got a new shock, you should always activate it a few times. So you'll see that it's got a nice, slow, progressive rise. And I tend to activate them a minimum of 3 times, just to make sure that she's fully operational. She rises up nice and steady. All good. So this one's already got the rubber seat at the bottom, so that's fine. So the first thing we're going to do is put the dust cover and the boot on, and then we'll put the spring over it, mount the top. We'll need the coil spring compressors to get the spring down, and then I'll be able to use the similar technique that I used to over there with the Allen key and the bolt and the socket to tighten it down to 60 Newton meters. So let's give that a go. Okay, so things to note on the shock. This area here, which is where my thumb is the stop for the spring. You need to make sure that it seats properly once you put it on. So you put the spring, you turn it around, and it will hit the end of the spring, which in fact is that end there. That tip will rest in there. Okay, now what we need to do is assemble the bump stop, and the bump stop will actually, when it's seated, will actually sit nice and snugly in there. Okay, but for now we'll put that on there. We'll put the dust cover on. That goes down. Yeah, might actually be easier to do it that way around. Put that on first, squeeze that down. For some reason it's being bloody awkward. I really need to find my tripod. It'll be so much easier. There we go. Right, 1 second, I'm going to have to do it the hard way. There we go. So that goes on there. That goes in there. And then the spring. Now, the spring has 2 ends. One that's quite flat, and one that isn't as flat. Now the one that isn't as flat is the one that actually goes onto the base of the shock. So it's going to go on like that. Okay, now what you'll see is that when that turns, you see the end of the shock coming round, and it touches into that stop point. Okay, now that's quite important because that will be how it needs to sit in its finished state. You need to make sure it's like that when it's seated and when the final strut is assembled in. So that's where that goes. Then you've got the top mount. Now the top mount obviously isn't going to fit in just by sitting it on the top and doing up the nut. So as you can see, we are well short of where the spring needs to be. Okay, so we need to compress the spring. Now this is probably my least favourite thing. Cutting the spring was pretty dangerous, but spring compressors, to my relatively limited experience, can be an absolute nightmare. Now I've got a pair that I've used a number of times before, so I'm fairly comfortable with them, but they're not the easiest things to use. Lots of garages have automated spring compressors, like on a hydraulic arm, it comes in, compresses the spring, etc. I don't have those in my personal garage, so I'm going to use the spring compressors. So I'm going to put them on, I'm going to set them up. I won't show you them doing them up, but I'll explain it to you as you go through. I definitely need two hands for this job, so it's going to be something I won't film, but I'll show you when it's assembled and before I put the strut tower, the top mount on, so you can see what it looks like. Okay, so just for reference, these are the two types of spring compressors that I've got. These are the ones that I've had since I was basically about 16 and started fiddling with cars. And this is the set that I've got now. So these ones, you put a wrench in the end and do it up. This one's obviously a big spanner or a socket. Depending on the type of spring you've got, depends on which ones work best. I've tended to always use these because they've got a double grip on them, but I had some trouble with these yesterday. Not dangerously trouble, but in the sense of, because of the spring's relatively small, and in the sense of the rate of compression on this spring is quite large, so this angle is quite big, whereas on some of the smaller springs the angle is much tighter. So getting these to sit on properly was quite challenging. So what I might do is try and compress it down with these ones to make it a bit easier, and we'll see how it goes. But we'll come back to this and I'll show you what I come up with. Okay, so this is the spring, currently under compression from the spring compressors, and effectively what that gives me is the ability to be able to put the mount on the top and get hold of the bolt. Now, so what would happen here is, obviously I get this started. Now this has to be done up to 60 Newton meters. It's not actually that easy because of the fact that you have to try and hold the middle while you're doing it up, and I'm sure there's a special tool for it. I'll just zoom out a little bit. But what that allows to do is to get it started. Now, what I found yesterday was if I use the Allen key and the tool that I was using over there, the socket with the what do they call it? Well, I'll just show you, it'll be easier. So what we've got is mole grips and this socket that fits on there nicely. And basically what you can do is you can put this in here and actually turn the shock so that it winds down the bolt. Now I found this works quite well yesterday, so I'm going to give it a go. And basically you just hold the mole grips and turn the Allen key until it locks down. So let's give that a go. you're wondering what that strange noise is, it's actually my battery charger for my Makita batteries. So make some random noise to let you know that it's fully charged, which I've always found quite amusing. Okay, so okay, as I said, can't get to 60 newton meters, but 60 newton meters is not a lot. Okay, she's fully home. So got the spring mounted, the dust covers on. Dust covers on, and what we've got to do is make sure that that is seated correctly, which it will be. So, and as you can see, that's nicely located on there. It's totally bottomed out. It's totally tight. Now, thing to remember here is that's important is these arrows. Okay. Now, the shock goes in so that tab is down the slot of the casting, and what needs to happen is this here needs to be facing here, front to back of the car. That should give you pretty much close alignment of this. Now obviously with the spring compressors on, this should be relatively easy to turn, so let me just turn it. Yeah, so it's an M8 tap for reference, coarse thread. And I'm just running them down. I'm not using any real pressure. Just want to clean it down, make sure that when the bolts go back in, they're nice and clean. And obviously these are a bit untidy, so just running the a bit of well, basically using that drill with the brush on it just to clean them up. A bit of lubricant on them before they go back in should allow them to seat, and I'll lubricate the underside of the head as well, so that when I torque it down, it should get to the right torque. Okay, that's cleaned. Now let's clean up the bolts, because they are not in great shape. Okay, just looking at those threads, the focus is a bit rubbish. Might just run an M8 tap down them just to be sure. What I might do while I'm getting replacements for the one that I broke yesterday, I might get a new set of bolts for this, because I'm not very happy with that, but I can put it back in temporarily, but I'll clean it up with the tap. So let me get the tap. So this is the die, an M8 die. I'm just zoom out a little bit so you can see what I'm doing here. I do apologise for the state of my garage, but yep, 3 bolts ready to go back in. Like I say, we'll put a bit of WD-40 on them before they go back in, so you can apply the right torque. But looking better. Okay, so now that we've got the shock, spring and top mounted, now we need the drop link. Now the drop link goes in here like so. Okay, so then that will drop into the bottom one once we've mounted it all in. Now technically you could do this afterwards. This is a fairly easy job to do, and I am tempted, I must admit, to leave it off, because it does get in the way a little bit. I did manage to do it okay with it on yesterday, at least mounted at the top, because it was going to be a fairly awkward thing to have to mess about with once it was all in place. The only concern is at the moment is that I've got the spring compressor set up so that when the spring is actually sitting in the seat at the bottom, this is up against this, which creates a bit of a concern for me. I may have to loosen this slightly and readjust it so that I can be able to undo it properly once it goes back on. Because what I don't want to do is get it in there, get it up, get it into the seat, and once this is up and in, not be able to get these off because I can't undo the nuts at the bottom. So got to be a little bit careful here with the setup. I might just trial it first and see how it goes, and then we'll put it on and decide whether the drop link's going on first or second. So just for reference, I've taken the spring compressors off just to make sure that the spring was seated properly, and to be able to allow me to put it in temporarily and get an idea of where I need to put the spring compressors. I need about, I'd say, about 2 inches of lift, which is quite a lot of compression on the spring, to be able to allow me to drop it in relatively easy into the casting. So I'm going to do that. So what I've done is I've looked at where on the shock mount, the bottom shock mount, I can put it, and basically this is where it needs to be. If you look at the shock mount, there's a slight rise here, so I need one mount here, and on the other side you can see that there are these holes here, and I need to be around the third or fourth hole here, so not quite opposite each other but towards the front, so that I can get them off afterwards. So I'm going to refit them now, and then we'll have a go at fitting it back in the hole. Okay, first problem. So I don't know if you can see this, but because of the base mount, which is wide, I can't actually get the bottom of the spring compressor onto the spring in the right position. So I'm going to have to switch to the other spring compressors and try and, at least for this one, fit it on this way. So let me swap it over. Okay, so I've had to switch to the other spring compressors because the smaller ones don't work. So as you can see, I'm lined up with the little rise on the base plate and about second and third hole. I've put a fair amount of compression on. You can see there's not much left on travel, but we'll see if it's enough when we try to put it back in. I've decided not to put the drop link on just yet. I'll do that in situ once it goes on, although technically it's fairly easy to put it on now because it goes just there. But I just think it might be in the way. I may regret that decision, but we'll see how we go on. Let's see if we can get it in the hole. Yeah, so we've switched to the other spring compressors. The red ones just don't work. They're too tight against the base. So I didn't feel safe. So I've lined them up with the rise and with the second and third hole. Should be slightly further around, but it'll manage. I'm not going to fit the drop link now. I'm just going to try and drop it in. I'll do that afterwards. It's not difficult, like I say. You just use the Allen key. It should be fine. Should be fairly accessible, so it should be okay. So let's give it a go and see if that's enough compression to be able to allow me to fit the top mounts, and yep, see if it drops in the hole. Now before I forget, this is what we were talking about the mark. So this is the length of strut that was in the housing. Now if I take my vernier, so we're looking at about exactly 75 millimeters. So there's 75 millimeters of travel in there. Just clean that up a bit. So 75 millimeters of travel. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to transfer that line. Now the visibility of that line for me is not too far from there. So what I'm going to do is lock that there, and I know any engineers out there are about to see what I'm going to do are going to turn in their graves, but this vernier is quite old, and I've got a Mitutoyo one which is much newer and more digital, so I just use this. Okay. So I'm just going to put the camera down a second. Okay, so that's what we're up against. We're going to sink that into the housing and hopefully get it seated with some ease. Let's have a go. So to try and ease fitment, I've just tapped very lightly a hammer into the groove. Now it should give me enough clearance still for the slot on the back of the shock, the little bracket that drops in, but it should allow it to go in easier. I'm going to spray it with some GT85 which I've got on the shelf. So the first thing I'll need to do is mount the top, but ideally I need to get the bottom of the shock in and then I can seat the top properly afterwards. But I'm just going to double check the setup. So arrows fairly well lined up with the bracket at the bottom. All right, let's see what happens. Okay, a bit of compression on the bottom. Can't quite get it seated. It's not all the way into the tower. So yeah, it's close, but as you can see, I've still got about, I don't know, 20 mil, 25 mil to come down, and at the moment it's stuck. So I'm gonna have to tap it down and just keep tapping until it drops in. Okay, useful tip. I put a little bit of compression on with the jack just to lift it up and seat the spring, and then all I've done is put the hammer, just the tip of the hammer, into the craw and just given it a little tweak, and that has shot home. Absolutely superb. So now let's get it reassembled and get the drop link on. Probably do the drop link first because it looks like I've got a bit of space. And then make sure that the top mounts are in, get them lined up, and then remove the, in fact, I'll do the top mounts first and then remove the spring compressors, make sure it's home. And then before I do up the bolt, make sure it's all seated and square. Okay, fun, fun, fun. Okay, so got the top of the shock spring mounted, and I've got the 3 fixings started. They're not done up yet. They're all seated though and well into their thread base. So what I'll do now is I'll release the spring and allow it to seat, and then I'll torque them down so that everything's free and freely moving. next. That's one. Now, let's, okay, so it's moved around and I can't get the bottom of the thing on, so I'm gonna have to find a spanner to suit that. So let me just find a spanner and get it undone. But you can see it's now too close to this, I can't get it undone, so I'll get a spanner and take it off. Well, this is much slower. Oh, the love of power tools. Okay, I won't record too much more of this. I'll let you come back to it at the end. Okay, so that's the mounts off. So what I'm going to do now is, before I finish off doing up the top bolt, I'm just going to put the bolt that goes in the back here on, and the drop link, just so that it's all tight and all upward thrusting, because of the making sure that I can apply the right torque on the top bolts. So let me just get those bits on now, in reverse order to what we did when we took them off, so just making sure that we get them to the right torque. So got the bolt in. As I said, it's a triple head torque to do it up, and the nut. So you're going to need a breaker bar and a ratchet and a 60 Newton meter torque wrench to be able to do the bottom bolt, the bolt up. Right. Right, 60 Newton meters on the bottom bolt. So she's done up. Just decided to put a little paint pen on there just to mark the bolt as being torqued, and I'll move on to the drop link. Right, so that's the top of the drop link in. 48 Newton meters of torque, although I'm not exactly sure how they expect you to apply that when you've got to hold an Allen key down the middle of it. So I've just done it up to as tight as I can bloody go. Next one, this one's in. Just put it in now. Going to do the same down here. It's a little bit awkward because you've got to get the Allen key in the back and then you've got to do it up with a spanner, which is a bit laborious and a bit slow. It's at 19 mil. So I'm going to use the ratchet spanner and get that done up. And then I can release the weight on the actual jack, drop it down, make sure that it's all nice and tight, and put the wheel back on. So let's get the bottom line. Click. I do find that amusing when YouTubers do that. And now I understand why they do it. Okay, so that's the drop link on. Okay, over to the top mounts now. And then it's tea time again. Okay, so the top mounts, I've got my torque wrench out. Right, so it's 11 Newton meters plus 90 degrees. Feels a bit tight for these bolts, but that's what they reckon it needs. Okay, top mount on. So that's torqued, as I said, it's 11 Newton meters plus 90 degrees, and that's all done up. Just for reference, the top nut is 44, not 60. 60 is the bottom one. But seeing as you can't do it up very easily with a torque wrench because you've got to use the socket, the hex key, then you just do it up as tight as you can make it, I guess. Okay, on to the bottom line. So let's just check it all out. Let's get the light. So the spring is seated properly, so that's in there, so that's on the base. It's all nice and secure at the top. That's in and torqued. That's in and torqued. That's in and torqued. Okay, so all looking good. So what I'll do now is I'll just give it a bit of a brush over with the wire brush, just to clean it up. Give it a spray with brake cleaner. I've got to clean the disc anyway because I may have accidentally sprayed some PTFE on it. So I'll get that out, but that takes the weight off. And let's put it back together, put the wheel back on, and take it for a run and let them settle in, see how they feel. Okay, so that's it. All in. It's all up there. All looking good. So just for reference, that point took me about 3 hours. Now, I'm sure a qualified mechanic with all the right equipment could do it down site faster. But taking into account that, you know, really those shocks have been in there for a long time, it could have been a lot worse. Certainly yesterday was a lot worse. So you've got to take into account this is not going to be a quick job if they've been on there for a while. Make sure you've got all the right parts. Replacement bolt for the bottom, 3 replacement bolts for the top. Top mount, strut, spring, all worth changing at the same time just to give you a sense of security and stability, and saving you having to do it again in the near future. Drop link as well, rusted on there, was never going to come off, and as you saw, the bottom one on that was pretty loose. So all in all, not a bad job. It's going to take me probably another 15-20 minutes, maybe half an hour to put the rest of the bit in, because I've got to put the wheel back on. I've got to put the valance under the windscreen back on, which was a bit of a pain to put back in. It's a little bit awkward. Windscreen wipers back on, get it down on the floor, get them seated, take it for a quick run down the road, make sure it feels all right. Probably going to need to have the wheels tracked anyway, because it was slightly pulling to the left. So that'll get done probably at the weekend. And then from that point of view, she should be good to go. Now, the next job on here is a timing chain. Now, I'm debating whether to try that myself. I've seen horror stories on YouTube of it being done. I've got all the parts. I've brought genuine parts from Sea Out this time, and didn't want to mess around with it. And I'm going to be doing the top chain, the bottom chain, which is the oil pump chain, water pump, the bottom sprocket on the timing chain, and all the guides. So that's all going to get done. I'm not sure if it'll be me doing that one, because I may run out of time before we go away, so I want to get it done before we go to Scotland. But all in all, I've really enjoyed that. It's been a not so easy job yesterday, fairly decent job today, so I'm pretty pleased. Gonna have a clean up now, get the wheel back on, get the bits in, and then we'll take it out for a test drive and see how different it feels with 2 brand new shock setups on the front. And I'll let you know. We'll go on the test drive. Okay, so we've taken the car out for a test drive. Feels pretty good, pretty stiff, much stiffer than it was before. It doesn't sound so clunky when you're going over the bumps. Yeah, it feels like it would on new suspension, which is great. The rear shocks were done probably 6 months ago, so they're pretty new. And all in all, it's stiffened the car up quite nicely. I've been over a few of the usual bumps that I've got in the place where I live, and it feels a bit stiffer and a bit tighter, not making so much noise, not got so much roll. And that shock on the passenger side was definitely dead when I tried it, pushed it down, nothing happened, it just stays there. So it's definitely damaged and leaked out probably over time. So yeah, all in all, pretty pleased, and we'll be on to the next setup now, trying to decide what we're going to do with the timing chain. But all in all, very pleased, and like I say, it's one of these things that you really can do on your own. If you've got the time, the inclination, and you want to give it a go, I recommend it. It's definitely something that you could try. It was challenging, don't get me wrong, and if it's something that you know, you really think you wanted to have a go at, I definitely recommend you could do it, because you know, I'm not an expert. Yes, I've worked on quite a few cars since I was a youngster, but all in all, it's not that hard. It just takes a bit of time, a bit of patience. Think about what you're doing, make sure you've got the right level of tooling, and give it a go. You've got to do these things, and if this inspires you, then please think about having a subscribe. I will be trying to put more of these videos up, a lot on the Seat, and hopefully on the kit car and other cars if I get round to it, and who knows where this might go. So hope to speak to you again soon. Thanks for watching, really appreciate your time, and have a good evening.